You know, Ashley, I love it when we sync up together because I've been trying to think of that song, and I thought, I'm going to ask her to sing that song. But I didn't know the name of it, and I only knew about 3 words of the chorus. So thank you for being on that same wavelength with me. I truly appreciate it. Welcome to all of those of you who are joining us online this morning, because we're going through our Advent story this couple of weeks in the month of December. And we started out in maybe a kind of a peculiar place. We started with Paul's letter, this first letter to the Corinthians, looking at chapter 13 and saying that Paul is actually laying out for us a twofold program. Verses 1 through 8, he is saying what love is. Because, you know, and as time has gone on, I think, and I mean time from when Paul to our present day, what we've lost is the sense of the love that he's talking about. What we see is Hollywood, what we see is emotion, what we see is a love of, you know, we have a love of things, we have a love of pets, we have a love of people, we have a love of something we've created, and that's all well and good too. But what we need to realize is that is like a subset of the love of God for us. This love that is everlasting, that's patient and kind, endures all things, believes all things. What is that kind of love? We only taste it in just fleeting moments of life. The second part of that letter, from verses 9 to 13, is he tells us then what this kind of love is going to do for us. And certainly we experience it on a very human level because he says that the love is going to connect us. Well, yes, it's going to connect and complete us, if you will. And isn't it true when we fall in love, we do feel like we've found that person that connects us, that completes us, that we were missing something in our life because someone wasn't there. And yet, what we realize is, again, that's just a sampling of what the greater love is all about. And love is going to mature us, and ultimately this kind of love will transform us. Now, that his dissertation on love was a little bit heady, and it's like, what has that got to do with the Christmas story? And realizing that love is in back of all things. Love is under all things. Love is the world in which we live, move, and have our being. It's in every cell and in organism of our life. But our journey on a human level is that we struggle to understand that love. We have moments where we glimpse it. Someday we're driving down the road, not thinking of anything in particular, and this beautiful sunset over the river, and you just go, wow. The birth of a child, what awe and wonder. The death of a loved one. What awe and wonder. Something beyond what your human mind can wrap around. Something that only your heart can truly embrace and grasp, and only for a fleeting moment. Because, for example, if you're driving along, you're just driving, oh, wasn't that an incredible sunset? And driving along, and you might come home and somebody says, what did you see today? Nothing. Just the regular stuff. And yet in that moment, you were touched with an awareness of an omnipresent, eternal sense of love. How interesting that is. But we struggle, of course, with our humanness. We say, well, I don't get it. You don't see it. You don't understand, Marianne. You don't understand my life. I remember when I first got into Unity, and my minister, Shay St. John, and she'd be standing up here talking about all this stuff, and I'd say, honey, you haven't got a clue as to how bad my life is. And I would sit there and think, she just doesn't get it, you know, because she's all dressed up, got her hair done, got her nails done, and she's got a really great life. Well, the more I got to know her, of course, the more I found out that wasn't true. But my perception was that she had it all together and I didn't. What I came to understand, what I came to finally realize, is that we all do this dance. We all do this struggle. We all come back to the Christmas story every single year, not because we have to go buy more presents, not because we invested a lot of money in Christmas decorations and it's time to put them out, but because we need to engage the story again. Again. With all of our foibles, with all of our very real human errors and ways. So last Sunday we looked at how our gospel writer Matthew, specifically in chapter 1 of the Gospel of Matthew, tells us that God has a plan for all of us in the sense that no matter how bad you may think your life is, there's a greater purpose for it. And so we open up the Bible account and we see that there's the story of 4 women who've had a tainted past. Now, why on earth are they in the genealogy of Jesus? The story of Tamar, the story of Ruth, and the story of Rahab, and the story of Bathsheba. And it all filters down to the story of Mary. What our gospel writers are trying to remind us is no matter what your past, no matter what your story, there's a greater life within you that is coming forth as you awaken each time to those transcendent moments of love working in and through you. When we talk about Mary being a virgin, we are not necessarily talking about her sexual status, because the 4 women that are prior to the announcement of Mary do not have a virginal status, let me tell you, if you've ever read their stories. So that can't be the focus. Now, I understand that theologically we've kind of made it the focus, but the point of a virgin is something that is pure. We talk about virgin snow, something that's never been walked in, something that's never been touched. So we want to have a virgin heart. But you know, that takes a lot, because how many of you have had a broken heart? How many of you have felt your heart has been betrayed? How many of you felt that your heart it can't love again? But you see, the story is telling us that even in just a little tiny way, if we can come to the Christmas story, to this act of love in a holy and sacred, open, pure space, just one little cell, in one little part of your heart, the mighty work will flow in and through it. It doesn't take a lot. What did Mary do? You know, it's so fascinating to me, because the story tells us that the angel comes. He doesn't really explain anything that we can figure out what he's talking about. And then he says, yes or no, Mary, what do you want to do? She says, sounds like a good plan to me. And she had no clue. Really, she had no clue of what was going to happen. How could she ever know? But what we understand as we come to the Christmas story is that our hearts need to be open. Our hearts need to be receptive. We're waiting for something. We are waiting for something. And that wait is in a very real, tangible way with all of these prayer requests upon our tree. That's what they are. We are looking at the present moment experience and saying, it's not what I dream, it's not what I want, so this is what I want. So now we're in this place of holy expectancy. Now we're in this place of the open heart. But you know, expectancy is an interesting thing. Let's look at our story again. What were the people expecting? Now, historically, all too often, we as Christians, unfortunately, say, well, the Jews are waiting for a Messiah. Well, yes and no. We have to broaden that understanding an awful lot. The Jews were not just waiting for a Messiah. They were waiting for the return of someone like King David. King David. For 1,000 years, from the time of David, who was, as far as we know, was a real-life historical person, in about the year 1000 BCE, to the time of Jesus, which is supposedly the zero number, for that 1,000 years, we've been waiting for the glory of Israel to return. We've been waiting for a king who will be a warrior king. We're waiting for a man who was kind in heart. David was a shepherd. We were waiting for a man who would lead us, someone from the city of Bethlehem. And we see in our gospel stories that Jesus flows into all of those. We hear things like Jesus is a good shepherd, but his father was a carpenter. Was he a shepherd? Could be, but so was David. He was a gentle and kind man. What we understand about David is he was too. David was a brilliant man, for he combined the warring tribes into a singular state. But the thing that we are waiting for, kind of get the story here. The Israelites of old are waiting for King David to return. They have an expectancy that the moment he comes, then everything will be fine. Because now, of course, when Jesus is literally physically walking on the earth, Israel is under the domination of the Roman Empire. So we're not free people. We want to be free people. We want to get rid of Rome. But what we need is a warrior king. And every Christmas, we get disappointed. Every single Christmas. Because what's the answer to the gift? And you all know what the answer is. Did we get a warrior king in the stable in Bethlehem? Did we get a warrior king on the cross on Calvary? Did we get a warrior king? We did not. We got a baby. We got a baby. That's the story. And unfortunately, that's why we tend to discount the story. Because quite frankly, we don't want a baby. We want a warrior king. Now think about it in your life. In relation to your prayers or your hopes or your dreams, you know, I want a new house. Okay, I want a new house. I don't want a condo. I don't want a lean-to tent. I want a new house. I've got all my plans, all my dreams. And anything short of that is not what I want. I want a warrior king, somebody out there to give it to me. Even with children, think about this. There's a kind of a double rub with expectancy, isn't there? There's an expectancy that your child will be born. The doctor says, well, it looks like your due date is going to be December the 25th. So there's an expectancy that this is going to happen, okay? The baby comes, yay, the expectancy has been met. But there's another expectancy, isn't there? The expectancy of what this child will be. And no matter how much you may try to orchestrate the life and the times of this child, you cannot do it. You cannot say, this child is going to grow up to be this, that, and the other thing. Times change, life change, circumstances change. The child changes, morphs, grows. And now suddenly, this child that you were so sure this is what's going to happen, doesn't happen at all. How many parents can agree with that? We've seen a child be born and we have great expectations. This is a brilliant child, this is a beautiful child. Of course, it's my child. It's a wonderful child. All these things, it's going, you know, to TU, it's going to graduate, it's going to do all these things. And then it says, no, I'm not going to do that. What do you mean you're not going to do that? Your father and I, we want to save, we want to have this, that, and the other thing for you. Of course you're going to do it. No, I'm going to be a musician. Oh, a musician. How bad can it get, really? Yeah. interesting thing about this. We can laugh about it when we talk about, our own children or even our own life. What were the expectations of your parents when you were born? The expectation of my parents, I was the oldest child of 5. I'm the oldest girl. What was the expectation in 1950? That I would grow up, marry, have children. Never in her imagination did my mother think she's going to grow up to be a minister. I wasn't even in the right denomination to have that happen. So my mother kind of just goes, I wonder how that happened. Don't you understand that, right? Okay, now translate that to your prayer requests. It's just a baby. The expectation is it will be born. And what we must know, and this is, I think this is some of the toughest work we have as humans, is to recognize that in the minute you've asked, it has been done. It has been born. The challenge is it has been born as a baby. This tiny little seed of prayer. And what is going to happen as that tiny seed grows? See, the story tells us that Jesus grows up, and just as we have grown up, and all the expectation that were there on the day of our birth did not materialize as we thought. Jesus never did become a warrior king. Jesus never did really become a shepherd. He became an itinerant preacher in Galilee. And he walked the hills, and he taught, and he prayed, and he healed. But the expectation of him being a Messiah did not materialize. And until we could let that go, we couldn't really see the message that he was talking about. I think we struggle as Christians today to get the message he was talking about. And what is the core of that message? We come all the way back to the story of love. The Christian gift to the world is the understanding that God is not up there, out there, somewhere, but that God is incarnate. And that fancy theological word means that in every cell and fiber of your being is God. There is no separation. There is no energy someplace else that if you beg and you plead and you pray and you do all kinds of things, that somehow God will notice you. Oh, looky there. And then grant you favors. Paul tells us that in God we live, move, and have our being. Imelda Shanklin, a great unity minister, said, yes, and in me, God lives, moves, and has expression. In me and in you. Even though, like the 4 women of our story, we've got a history, we've got a journey, we aren't the perfect people, there's a little tiny place within our heart every single Christmas. And I struggle with that. I think we all struggle with it. Because I say, well, it didn't happen last Christmas. I didn't get an answer there, or this didn't happen, or my prayer didn't work out. And to come to that place of that purity, come to that place to understand that incarnation, where I am going to become more and more and more aware that I am an infinite expression of God. That you are an expression of God. That all of God is expressing through us is a difficult struggle for us all. Because we see things happen in our life, in our world. We experience the trauma and drama that we all go through. And so we say, well, how is that really God? But you see, we're back to the issue that love isn't in the box. The kind of love that Paul's talking about isn't in the box. It's this universal love that never fails. It's kind, it's loving, it bears all things, it believes all things. It is a love that incarnates in your life. That is the great creative act of the Creator. And we find it in the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. What is that Word? I ponder that. What is that Word? And that Word is, let there be, and our response is, yes. What is the Word? Let there be. And our response is yes. And then the baby is born. The baby is born in the marriage and the union of the Creator and the creation, interlocking. And a tiny seed gets placed within us and begins to grow. Remember a couple of weeks ago we used the analogy of the tea bag and how at first it's simply water. It takes a while for the tea to sort through all the water, to steep and become richer and stronger. And that's how it is in our life. Christmas after Christmas, we come to the story with a patient, peaceful expectancy. Yes, there's the edge that we want it to happen, and we want it to happen now. I know we all thought we got past being a child where it's like, is it Christmas yet? But when it comes to our prayers, we're the same space. Is it done yet? Do I have my answer yet? Come on, God, let's get on with it. I don't see any presents under my spiritual tree. And yet, when we are willing to say, all right, love is at work. Love is at work. Every cell, every fiber of my being, regardless of how young I am, regardless how old I am, regardless of my state of health, love never ends. That means just because my body does means that love does not. And therefore, I'm always connected to that universal flow. And the more I awaken to its presence and its power, the more I understand that I am in that flow eternally. So this Christmas season, yes, it is one about expectancy. It is one about love. It is one with being willing to stand in that place that says, let there be, and our position of saying yes. Because all too often we say, no, doesn't look like what I want it to. It doesn't sound like the way I want it to. It means I'm going to have to change. It means I might have to mature. It means I might have to do something that I don't like. It means that I might have to grow and expand. Because remember what love does? It connects us, it matures us, and ultimately transforms us. So let the power and the energy of this Christmas season once again come to the holy and the sacred moment. When you hear those words, let there be, you affirm yes and sit in the peaceful, silent expectancy of a new incarnation, a new awareness of the life that is already there. Thank you and God bless.